Well, we talked about enabling, but what we didn't talk about was the legal ramifications of enablers. Hi, you're listening to The Human Resource. My name is Pandy, and I've brought back one of our show favorites. Today on the show, we've got Scott Warrick, an attorney and HR consultant in Columbus, Ohio. Scott, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always fun to get together and chat.
Well, and this is one of your favorite topics. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about, how do you identify an enabler? Who are you enabling, and what are you enabling? Because that is so prominent in the workforce today that I just don't think employers are understanding the implications of where that leads. I mean, I tell them, but Scott, you're here to help them understand the legal ramifications.
Oh, yeah. And let me just sort of, I like that you're spending a couple of shows on this because understand the law's taken a real hard line when it comes to enabling. Okay, so let's just look at some legal issues that come up here. And first and foremost, you really need to be doing your harassment and bullying training. Some states require it by statute. All other states, like Ohio and Kentucky and several other states from the United States Supreme Court, if you have not taken reasonable measures to prevent harassment and bullying, and it's a supervisor who does it, you're automatically liable. So you don't pass go, you don't collect $200, you are guilty. It's called strict liability. Now, here's the problem. Is a lot of companies aren't doing this type of training to make sure that, we're watching for this kind of stuff. But in 2016, the EEOC came out with its new list of requirements for our harassment training. It's their guidelines. And one of those is bystander intervention. Now, this ties in together perfectly. The EEOC absolutely positively wants you to train your people in bystander intervention, because when a bystander speaks up, bullying and harassment stop on average 57% of the time within 10 seconds. Okay, so that's for everybody. Okay, so you want that in your training, and that's what the EEOC is telling you. Now, up that one notch for someone who is a supervisor, okay? You are put in a position of authority to govern the workplace. Okay, so not only are you just a bystander now, but you are a bystander with authority. And let me cut right to the chase.
Scott, stop. No. Let me back you up real quick. Explain to them and clarify the definition of a supervisor, because this is not someone who just is limited to supervisor in their title.
Right. No. And let's define this under Title VII, because a supervisor is going to have a different definition when you're talking about the National Labor Relations Act as opposed to everybody's got their own definition. So let's say that you are managing people and you make everyday decisions that have tangible consequences. Like, I am going to schedule you. Okay, I have power over your schedule. I have power over, my opinion makes a difference as to whether you're going to get a raise, as to whether you're going to get hired, as to whether you're going to get fired. Okay, so I'm not just like what we call it a working supervisor who really basically doesn't do much of anything, but they're working doing the same job. No, this is a supervisor who has some authority or some real input into what you're doing. And that's right from the United States Supreme Court about 15, 20 years ago. So most people are promoted into those roles because they got more money. But what came along with that, when I'm talking about a supervisor for today's purposes, I'm talking about you have input into their job, into the tangible aspects of their job. So you're given authority. All right. Now, you might not have the final decision, but your input is given some weight. All right. So think of the position that you have now. all right, that you are watching something. Let me just give you a very common type of situation. You see something happening in the workplace, something, okay, that an employee is being harassed because of age, race, religion, or whatever. Someone is, something potentially illegal is happening. If you don't say something, you're aware of it, you just gave it tacit approval. You just said it was okay. That could come back to bite you one day because an employee is expected to report it. But I will tell you, if you're standing right there as a supervisor and you see something happening that is maybe dangerous, so you could have an OSHA violation, you see something that is harassing, you see something that is a violation of an employment law somewhere, in states like Ohio and several other states, you have noticed and you didn't do anything, so you just said it was okay. And that brings all kinds of liability to it, all kinds of liability. Now, just want to make sure, so that is basically what we say is a bystander, and you have enabled the situation, okay? And let me tell you how bad enablers are. In every disaster, every genocide, every court case, all right, that you see this type of stuff going on, you always have three types of people. You have the victim, and maybe a few victims. You always have them. You have person, okay? Most of the people stand by and don't want to get involved, okay? And this goes back to our fight or flight. Most people don't want to get into a fight. What do most people do? I'm glad they're not picking on me. I'm just glad this isn't happening. I don't want to deal with this situation. That is enabling the illegal conduct to continue. And this comes up an awful lot with whistleblowers. Somebody sees something potentially illegal, and understand, to be caught on a state whistleblower law, it doesn't actually have to be illegal. It has to be something that the reasonable person would think would be illegal. Okay. More cases are actually lost because not that the whistleblower spoke up and that they were right. What usually happens is the whistleblower speaks up, lets someone know, and then we retaliate against them.
And
Most people stand back and don't do anything. That's an enabler, and that's the bully.
And Scott, let's talk about why that normally happens. And again, when we're talking about team leads, we're talking about people that are promoted into these positions of authority. How many times, viewers and listeners, how many times have you later identified that the individual was not capable of moving from that peer mentality and truly understanding that they now have responsibilities? We haven't necessarily empowered them. We just put them in the role and said, hey, from now on, you're responsible for this. And that individual just hasn't been able to grasp the idea that these aren't his friends anymore, or that she's not a part of the group anymore. And therefore, they let things slide that maybe they shouldn't. And Scott's trying to explain to you that if you have these situations, your business is at extreme risk.
Oh yeah, that's the bottom line right there. Absolutely. And let's sort of piece this apart a little bit. I don't want to be the bad guy. These are my friends.
Yes.
And I'm like,
yes.
First and foremost, you're a bad friend. You're a bad person. You are a bad friend. And I want you to, here's the example I use in class. Oh, I'm nice. I don't want to upset this person. Really? If this person was a drug addict or an alcoholic, would you have an intervention? Would you say something to him? No, I don't want to say anything. I know they'll probably die, but hey, that all works out in the end. No, you have an intervention with that person. That's what we do with people who are screwing up in the workplace, because I want them to get better. I don't want to wait until it blows up. I want to sit down with you.
Let's go back to what those legal ramifications could be, because here in the state of Ohio, employees can actually sue the supervisors, correct?
Oh yeah. And yes, and that is the trend in this country. Absolutely. Because I mean, here's the logic. ABC company denied me this, or they discriminated against me because of this and everything. Well, okay, most supervisors, like, are most supervisors qualified to do what they do? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because we take somebody who was a good engineer, was a good architect, a good nurse, whatever, and we say, you're really good. It's like Michael Scott of The Office. He was your best sales guy. So what do? You promote him and you put him in charge of people, which is a total career change. Okay. Now, he can supervise, or he can sell. He's your best sales guy. But you ever see how excited he gets when he gets to go sell? And whenever there's a conflict in the office, what's he do? He has a party and everybody gets their own liter of vodka. That's bad. Okay. So rule number one, if you have supervisors out there, you have to train them. Okay. You've got to train them in a lot of stuff. But number one, conflict resolution. If you cannot address and resolve a conflict as a supervisor and hone up your listening skills, you cannot be a supervisor. You can't do it. You've got to go do something else. And you can look at these court cases. I've got legal updates that I'm working on. I got a 6-hour program coming up. And I'll tell you, because someone was supervising people who should have actually been emptying the garbage. They shouldn't have been in charge of people. And they were probably great nurses, but nobody taught them this stuff. So here I'm going to take Betty the nurse, who was a great nurse, and now I'm going to put her in charge of people. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's a nice person, so she enables situations. And someone somewhere, let's say, gets harassed because of their age. Let's just throw that one out there. Okay. In states like Ohio, I can sue the hospital or the practice. You can always sue. That's where the money is. But I can sue Betty personally. Okay. Because she was the supervisor who stood there and didn't do anything. She knew about it and she let it happen. And remember, I knew it was happening. I didn't do anything. So I just said it was okay.
I think
Ohio has that type of law.
This is where I usually bring in the last episode of Jerry Seinfeld, where they were all standing on the sidewalk videotaping the guy getting mugged out in the street. Actually, when that was being taped, it was prior to anyone really talking about bystander laws or requirements. And but here's the challenge I want to give our viewers and our listeners, because we're just about out of time. I want you to go back to all your boots on the ground. I want you to go back to these supervisors, and I want you to look at exactly what you have and do what Scott said. Go back and review those training records. Have you trained them? And if you have, what have you trained them? Are you teaching them and empowering them to stand up and make a decision in the best interest of the company? They cannot afford legal fees. And Scott, you've mentioned this a million times. Legal fees are out of they will have to represent themselves. The company cannot represent both the company's position in the case and the employee. So
right.
Do your supervisors even know this? And the companies I talk to, they're not telling their supervisors, and by the way, please understand, you're on your own.
Yeah. No, actually, we've got a few and I'm dealing with these law firms right now. I got a law firm in Pittsburgh I'm dealing with. And I'll tell you right now, when you put somebody in a position of power, you just said, that's my guy. Yeah. That's my guy. Yeah. I'm going to stand by that person. And you put somebody, honestly, you would never put somebody in a tractor trailer to drive that thing if you haven't trained them.
Right. The good analogy.
And that's exactly what's happening here. So let's see how this unfolds. And I'll tell you, the trend today is that I'm not necessarily looking to win in court, but if I'm a plaintiff's attorney and you have a supervisor who is acting like this, what I would say probably 90% of the supervisors in the world today, that is exactly what they're doing. They're not qualified for their job, and it's because the company didn't help them, didn't train them. And so you're going to have to spend attorney's fees. Attorney's fees for an employment attorney today, you are getting a bargain at $450 an hour. And so I'm dealing with an attorney right now in Pittsburgh. He gets $800 an hour.
I told him earlier that it could go up to $1,000. And
if you're in New York, you're $1,600.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You're gonna pay for a view from the Trump Tower? Are you kidding me? You price that? Okay. I mean, no, it's expensive, and I will tell you, I had just advised the client, and let me tell you too, my clients that I've worked with for years, where we've trained the people in conflict resolution, which are my EPR skills, empathic listening, parroting and rewards, how to address a conflict, how to coach. Documentation is anything that you have delivered to the employee, talk to them, and it's in writing.
Yeah.
You got to have both.
Yeah.
And if it's been written down and delivered to the employee, it didn't happen. And then a written warning. I want to see the coaching, conflict resolution, verbal warnings in which there is an email sent to the employee, so it's time-stamped, recapping the meeting, written warnings. In 29 years of practicing law, I've never had a client sue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never. Because that attorney, plaintiff's attorney, is not going to spend 200 hours and not get paid. They're going to move on to someone who has a supervisor who is doing the best they can, but doesn't know documentation, doesn't know this stuff. And so what you're seeing in states like Ohio is, if you're the one doing the harassing, you're just toast on a stick. It's just that simple. You personally. But and we've got a firefighter up in North Ohio had to whip out $75,000 in payment to somebody he decided to sexually harass.
Oh
okay.
My gosh.
Today, the supervisors who knew about it and didn't do anything about it, they are, and this is right from the text of the ELUA, Employment Law Uniformity Act in Ohio, and there's a lot of other states that have things like this. You aided and abetted. You watched it. You helped. You didn't do it, and you're in a position of authority. So you see, you owe a duty to speak up. It's not like, hey, I'm just a bystander. No, when you're a supervisor, you have a duty to speak up. And so most of my clients, I mean, if you went to court today, you better get ready for $100,000 to $150,000 in attorney fees.
Oh my gosh!
Right now. Oh yeah. I've had these bills go out, and I'll tell you, it's like I'm very grateful. I've got one client that called me. Oh, we got this, and we just got sued. And I said, yeah, you got sued because you didn't do it right. You didn't talk to the employee. You didn't coach them. You didn't send them emails recapping your discussion. You didn't give them written warnings. There are holes in your defense. Okay. Now you can pay them $50,000 to go away, or you can pay me $150,000 to win. Understand? I've never lost. You're probably not going to lose, but most of this would put my clients out of business.
Yeah.
And I just had one of these last week. So I get these calls. Put it this way: I get these calls after someone's leg is in the bear trap.
Yeah, but
okay?
that's
they get this demand.
That's why they're listening to this show now, Scott. That's why they're listening.
Yeah. Oh, and let me make one thing really clear here, Pandy, and let me make this out there, because I get this from CEOs. No, you don't understand. We're incorporated. Yeah, okay. Let me make this really clear to you. This is employment law. There are no corporate bails, pal. Oh, no. Oh, no. Employment law goes through corporate bails like an 800-pound gorilla.
And this is why I have him on the show, guys. I can never get all of his ideas on the same show, but he's going to come back. Scott, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you being here. Look, the bottom line is, listeners, the bottom line is, if you're not training your supervisors, and if you've heard it a million times, you're at a serious risk. So
Oh, yeah.
take our advice, do the training,
Yeah.
contact Scott, contact me. We'll walk you through it. But most importantly, come back and see us again right here.
Yeah. If you
At-
go to scottwarrick.com, I got free stuff out there.
There you go. Come back here to the human resource. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right.